Many different artists over the years have come to try to bring the prehistoric world to life through art. Some made entire careers off of the artistic resurrections of the past. There are many greats who ring in the mind of paleontologists and paleoenthusiasts of today just from their work alone. Charles R. Knight's Tyrannosaurus vs. Triceratops, a classic of the ages. Zindek Burian's Elasmosaurus and Mosasaurus dueling in a primordial ancient sea. Henry de la Biche, a more ancient Dorset, one of the earliest examples of Paleoart I can give possible. Rudolf Zallinger's A Mural of Time. Honestly, one of the best ways to describe just the format of age across time to people. Gerhard Hielman's Archaeopteryx, a great example of early people trying to figure out the exact origin and connecting points between dinosaurs and birds. But I think someone who deserves to be remembered along with the other greats of paleoartistry, and a bit more eyes on their wonderful masterpieces, is the great William D. Barry. William D. Barry, also known as Bill Barry, was an Alaskan wildlife artist, quite possibly the best wildlife artist in the 50s to 70s many people would agree on. In my college art class, we even had a few of his books. William D. Barry, 1954 through 1956 Alaskan Field Sketches. I implore you, if you can find these books and give them a look in either some bookstore or a half-price store or library, please look at them. His sketches and illustrations really are just fantastical. He pays so much attention to the anatomy that everything feels mid-motion when he's drawing it. Like, okay, let's look at this little metal vole for an example. He's locked onto its anatomical forms and even made comments of its behaviors and where he sketched it. Raw, visible dedication to his craft in every single stroke. But Will wasn't just known for his realism, sometimes he would draw scenes of a more fantastical nature. This mural is by far one of my favorites of his too. There's just so much life going on through the scene. No corner you see is empty from being populated by something in the middle of some action or movement to its next pose. Like, there's just a little bear picnic in the side, and look at the little cub as it's witnessing the little wooden goblin beast approaching it. I just adore the feeling that even some of its residents of this portrait are staring back at us just as much as we're staring at them. The baby moose, the hare, the dryad, and some of the birds are looking right back at us. Mr. Barry made this entire scene feel populated. Although my favorite actually isn't anything in the foreground. It's the little dragon way up at the top. That little dragon flying over the parade next to the goose. Oh, I know it's a small thing, but it's so lively in the scene. It just adds so much to just have it be a little bit more way up there. Way above everything down below. There's so much I go on and on with this work, but I bet you're probably wondering not about his fantastical fantasy stuff, or his wildlife art. So it's about time we get a bit more on topic, and how about we dive into some paleo art? We need to go back a bit. Way back. From our current year of 2025, we need to travel way back to the year 1958. Specifically, to one of the paleontological places starting us off with this piece depicting Dryosaurus and Camptosaurus at the Jurassic Hall of the Carnegie Museum in Pittsburgh. He also illustrated some illustrations for the Dinosaur National Monument, where he was commissioned to illustrate a good amount of critters from the Morrison Formation, and even just some others from the Mesozoic in general. The ones I could find, for example, were Brontosaurus, Camarasaurus, Diplodocus, Anichosaurus, Stegosaurus, Hooplasuchus, Ankylosaurus, possibly a Euparkeria, Allosaurus, this small theropod, Brachiosaurus, and some little turtles. All of these illustrations are remarkable in their layers of skill, so I'm going to start off with the sauropod side of things, because I do love how he depicted them extremely. The sauropods we have from the Morrison Formation, plus this little prosauropod that Mr. Bill Barry painted, really do make my brain just flicker with awe. There's just a feeling of weight and raw size with all of them. I'm honestly trying to figure out how I can properly vocabulate it, and just trying to figure out which one I was even going to talk about first, so I decided to just choose the one I did enjoy the most. The Diplodocus emerging from the depths to take a breath has to be my favorite piece. It was a hard bargain though, because the Brontosaurus wading through the river during the storm was a close call, but I'm gonna make that one second. But back to the Diplodocus pair, the Bronto will have its time, don't worry. the thing that just made my jaw drop the longer I stare at the Diplodocus pair is the fact that there's just a feeling of murkiness in the water. The little ripples from the wake of the dinosaur that emerges, the clear wetness from the lake. Just a sign of immense size, and we can't even see the full actual animal in this scene. It's still emerging. It just blows my mind that this illustration feels so tangible. It feels more like a photograph than a picture. I struggle to properly put my fascination in the words gazing at the magnificence of these two giants below the waves. But I'm not going to go on and on forever about them. I'm going to move on to the second one, because this Brontosaurus, aka Apatosaurus, specifically for the time, now it's Brontosaurus again. It's just a sheer Goliath trudging through the storm as it continues onward to the destination unknown. A bit of a side note, I realized William unintentionally got the beaked look of sauropods far before they probably would have known about that. I find it a bit funny, but I'm not sure whether to chalk it up to just sheer coincidence or just simple tortoise/turtle reference due to him being a wildlife illustrator. I'm not going to cover every single illustration because I do want the viewer to also look around and experience some of that majesty that I did. So I'm going to end off the sauropod discussion by taking a look at this little guy over here, the little Ornithischians. I hope I'm saying that correctly. This little Ornithischians, although I couldn't find an actual origin aside from the art being on display at the 2016 meeting of the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology, it was from the lovely people at the Love in the Time of Chasmosaurus, who have recently moved to a new website, by the way. Go give them a look if you can, if you want to see some retro paleo discussions. Has sadly been the only real pictures I could find of this fella. I don't know where he's from, but I'm thankful to have been able to see him. I do really like how stiff its neck is, because it makes me think exactly of a spooked goose sort of stopping in its tracks to immediately look around for what could have caused the noise. I do wish we could see the images in a better quality, or maybe scanned, but I'm thankful at least have been able to see in the first place. But that's okay, because I think it's time we move on to some theropods. That's probably what everyone's excited for, maybe. I was hoping there were more theropods. I hoped there was going to be more theropods, but it seems all I could find online was just Allosaurus, or as it used to be referred to, Antrodemus. We'll talk about that different video. But for now, we will tackle... Oh, before I forget. Also, this little guy. Unsure where he came from. But for now, we're just going to tackle the main majority first. Mostly just Allosaurus in general. This Allosaurus was not actually commissioned for the Dinosaur National Monument, but it was drawn and put on display at Arch National Park in 1960, so that's a neat thing to note. You can even see it here in this other picture. Its tall and upright stance is evident for the theropods at the time. Something I want to make note that I find interesting is how none of these theropods are exactly touching the ground with their tail. Sure, they get close, but none of them are fully dragging across the floor. So that shows that they were sort of learning. Kind of. Maybe. Possibly. But moving on to his most known piece, and probably everyone's favorite, the Allosaurus pursuing the Camptosaurus. I've seen a lot of talk about this piece. Brian Engh even made an entire video discussing the anatomy of both animals and the general ecology of the time. Greg Paul even listed and discussed how influential seeing this piece was as a young paleo enthusiast. Even went as far as to include it in his book, The Scientific American Book of Dinosaurs. Interesting thing of note, in one interview in 1999, they write Bill's last name as not Barry, but Boney, for some reason? Needless to say, I'm sure folks have seen this piece a quite good amount, and for good reason too. It's one of Bill's best works, being a dynamic chase. You can feel the energy of both the animals as they leave splash marks behind in the swamp. The Camptosaurus trying to outspeed the Allosaurus to live another day, but the Allosaurus needing to catch the Camptosaurus to have the fuel to see another day is an equally harrowing visage. While I do suspect the Allosaurus will grab the Camptosaurus, who is to say? It doesn't just make a sharp turn, leaving Allosaurus to lose his footing in the mud and escape to see another day. Or perhaps the Allosaurus will bring its weight and jaws and claws onto the back of the Camptosaurus to acquire the sustenance such a large body craves. Who knows? It's really up to the viewer to decide. But we can all decide that this piece, no matter which viewer, is an equally masterfully illustrated showing of Allosaurus in the Morrison Formation being a dynamic and active hunter chasing after its prey. I do really like how its hands are both facing properly inward and not protruded like the bunny hands of most other 50s or 70s dinosaur illustrations or skeletal mounts at this time. But speaking of hands, he also illustrated an anatomical piece of the musculature of a theropod arm. I'm not going to dive into the musculature of theropods. There's already an entire other video about that. That's Brian Ging. He covered it already. Go see his video. It's in the description below. I see that the musculature, however, goes a bit transparent towards the end of the fingers, and at some points in the arm, you can still see the skeleton through the thick muscles which compose the saurian's arm. And how do you do that in painting? I don't know how you, I'm not exactly that fully into painting, so I don't know how you would do that. But that is fascinating to me. That's awesome. But I think it's time we finally tackle the mystery fellow. I'm not sure what this animal is supposed to be. I feel like it might be from wherever the Enghosaurus is from. It's also an early-esque looking dinosaur, but it might be a coelophysid like Podokesaurus or Megapnosaurus. I don't know what it is. It's gazing back at us as it marches forward towards somewhere we don't know. I wonder if it's a sort of conceptual take on the fact that these dinosaurs would go on to dominate the world. It might not seem like much, but a species like this was the one who went on to carve the way for the Saurischian might we know of today, with birds still dominating the main flying niches of today. Now, Ornithischians, we have a lot of choices for which one to cover first, but I'm going to choose the one that actually surprised me the most out of all of them. I found this Ankylosaurus in a PDF from the NPS history, which surprised me. I had only discovered this completely at the last possible minute. I'm not even sure where the piece is from or who exactly it was made for. I know it's in this book. It excites me to know that there might be more of his work out there somewhere in an archive, though. That's exciting. I'm putting this out there in hopes that someone will be able to find maybe more of his work. If you do know of more William D. Beery Paleoart that's not listed by the end of this video, please email me at rustleddoodles@gmail.com. But moving on from the Ankylosaurus, let's move on to the 3 stegosaurs he depicted. All of these stegosaurs use the old hunched tail low to the ground stegosaurus posture that was common at this time, but I do like how sort of bird-like the face is. It reminds me of a mix of a tortoise and a bird with how it's constructed. It kind of folds into a beak at the end, but the starting part makes me think really of a turtle. The feet are also very elephantine, but it seems that he was just kind of sticking to the rule for how they kind of went about doing these things at the time, because not many people had really probably investigated full-on dinosaur anatomical research at this point. It was all just a matter of perspective. Also, I don't know if this is something that he was paying attention to or not, but there's only 3 claws on the foot of the stegosaurus, which is funny because archosaurs really only have 3 claws on like the forefoot, like the front feet really only have 3. You can look in alligators or crocodiles for reference. There's also a smaller row of osteoderms lower than the larger plates, which I find neat. That's an interesting structure. But moving on to the Camptosaurus and Dryosaurus, nibbling on plant life here and trying to keep track of any potential predators nearby, like the Allosaurus from earlier. I do really enjoy how they're not just in a static and stiff posture or pose like how in other Paleoart depictions they might be. A huge problem I have with looking at earlier Paleoart is how either the critters are overly moving or just kind of standing there in a blank expression, gazing around to do nothing. These guys, though, they're very active. This one here is kind of just sitting here, but this one up here is also nibbling away. Though even the ones in the back, the Camptosauruses, are actively moving still as they're chewing or walking upright or on all fours. They're not all just a cookie cutter type paste, which is very nice. Even the patterning on the Dryosaurus is different between the 2 individuals. Maybe it's a hint of sexual dimorphism, or possibly a difference in camouflage over the ages, as the other Dryosaurus even looks a bit smaller and thinner than the one who's eating from the tree. Also, the Camptosauruses in the background are actually the ones of the next image, so let's move on to them. I think that's neat. I do just love his use of colors in all of these images, though. All of these have various different plant life, and its use of shadows and splotches of color to fill in for more foliage that doesn't need to fully be detailed here. Our brains will fill in that detail, is fascinating to me. It's also very lovely and makes the scene just feel so much more lively. There's just so much filling it, but we don't even need to see all of it. We just can tell it's alive, which is kind of sad and fitting going to our last Ornithischian, which isn't even alive, but rather this deceased Triceratops head. Another SVP painting. I once more don't know where it originated from, but I do love the colors he used while illustrating it, although I will say the deep somber blue with the yellowish tones of the foliage compared to the vibrancy of everything else before really does make you kind of realize just how lively and fantastical things must have been for such Goliaths to be roaming around. All of the other illustrations are full of greens and bright, vibrant browns, but this one with the Triceratops is just full of yellows and oranges, like it's almost winter. It really does kind of feel like everything's just been swept over by a cold chill now that the last of the dinosaurs are gone. Although, with the end of the dinosaurs, that lets us segue into the last illustrations of his that we will cover today, the non-dinosaurian critters that also populated the Mesozoic period. He drew a few good crocodilians and a turtle. I do wish I could say more about the turtle, but I could only find it in black and white, and I can't really find a colored version, so we're sadly just gonna have to scoot it aside and focus on the crocodilians. So the first of the crocodilians that we have are these two Gonophophilles. I can totally see the alligator reference in these though. Barry probably went to a zoo nearby to get some good reference. Although the reason I suspect it's alligators is mostly just because they only have the top row of teeth showing and not really the bottom. Crocs, you can see the bottom row intertwining with the top one. Also, the muddy green of this one really does add a nice swampish feel. But the next crocodilian illustrated wasn't as aquatic. This Hoplasuchus illustrated here is just depicting this little guy skittering around the forest in the Morrison Formation. Only one of these guys has actually been found, from what I found out. The feeling I get from this illustration is making me imagine this little guy skittering around, hoping to not be noticed by some larger predator. Small and traveling with a purpose, let's wish this guy some luck as we go into our next crocodilian. This is also the last illustration from the Chasmosaurus that they documented at the SVP showing of Barry's art. But I am also unsure of who this is, and again, supposed to be. Is it Euparkeria? Is it Ornithischians, maybe? I don't know, but I do love its energy of this piece. The smears on the floor to be a floor of leaf litter as this small Archosaurid crosses our path, unknowing that it would be leaving behind paleontological footprints far bigger than actual ones in its life footprints. So many questions about this little guy and the origins of dinosaurs and their legacy all stem to the thought that something like this might have been the origin to the mighty dinosaur lineage. It's depicted in a way to convey a little miniature theropodish postures that scampers by us, and I like that. It's a little glimpse into the distant world and also into a masterful piece. All of Williams' illustrated pieces are masterful works of art, which I think deserves to be right up there with the great titans of paleo art. Many of them are almost contemporary with how they are, but there is one more piece of work that I feel like deserves a bit more praise too, and even just more eyes on it as well. I haven't seen a lot of much open praise for this one, and one that deeply fascinates me in its looks, because I had a book I grabbed a while back, which actually I had to say. This book brought back a plethora of memories to my brain of an old VHS film childhood me had, which also had this diorama in it. This diorama I'm talking about is the Sandbar Cemetery at the Dinosaur Visitor Center. I think it's time we do this channel's first ever diorama deep dive. Let's take a step back for a second and rewind the clock slightly to my youth for just a wee second. This diorama brought so many memories to my younger self sitting in front of a VHS and a CRT, watching documentaries that my grandmother had managed to grab for me. I don't remember the name of them, just that they had this documentary in both of them, that's what I was for sure of. But unwinding the clock to come back to now, to look for more information on this diorama, I was still wondering how to cover this, but if only I had more pictures. eBay is filled with postcards, specifically vintage postcards. The spark of curiosity grew a bit brighter as I gathered an intake from these postcards. They were also all not the same postcard either. Some would have their own special little writing beneath them, serving their purpose to inform and educate people during the 60s. But we're not here for those currently. We are here right now for the Sandbar Cemetery. That's its name, by the way. So we kept digging, and we stumbled upon another book which actually had the cemetery in it. The book, called Dinosaur Mountain, Graveyard of the Past, had 2 whole viewings of the diorama inside. We get a better look at the denizens of this diorama with more of the Camarasaurus in view this time. But still, this was only a bare minimum of the true features of the diorama. 3 more pictures gained my interest. One from the Open Parks Network, another from a library, and the last one was actually from a tourist site's review. Then, the realization hit me. If I wanted to find more pictures of the diorama, why not just send a message to the place who had it? So we sent the Dinosaur National Monument an email and we waited. But during my wait, I also did still keep digging. I found an entire YouTube video of an old documentary known as The Great Dinosaur Discovery. I had effectively re-stumbled upon one of the 2 VHSs I remember having the documentary inside. We get some good close-ups of some bits in the documentary, but still not the full thing. The full diorama is yet to be displayed. Some of the denizens I wish I could get a fuller look at. The feeling that there has to be more just still sits there. The fixation still stands, and that flame of curiosity burns brighter. My search led me to a university library to unearth an old film, Dinosaurs in the Wall. Although not this actual second VHS tape, this one was a new experience to have, as it both had some wonderful pictures and views of the diorama. With thus able to get some better angles of the Androdemus / Allosaurus, who calls the cemetery home, and also of the Camptosaurus carcass, as well as some of the crocodiles down below. But there was one thing I had been waiting for, and the wait was extremely worth it. A full view of the Sandbar Cemetery was gifted to me through pictures from the magnificent Rebecca Hunt Foster. That flame that is my curiosity had just grown into an inferno, and the thought ballooned in size, and I realized, why had I not just done this sooner? If I can email the Dinosaur National Monument for the current pictures of the diorama, why not just email the berries for pictures of the progress or sculpts of the diorama? The inferno had consumed the entire conceivable universe that is my Mesozoic madness-filled mind, and so the curiosity which once held a single spark had just bloomed into a growing star. The email was sent, and the pictures I received are magnificent beyond words. There it is, up close and detailed, even a pun! Allosaurus, Camptosaurus, and Gonophophilus. Although there are sadly no pictures I received of the Camarasaurus, I'm still happy with what I got. These are close-up pictures of the most denizens here. With that, we have a good overall visage of everyone here. I think it's finally time, to talk about this diorama. It's time to properly dive in. The Sandbar Cemetery is a work that was actually built by 2 people, not 1. William D. Berry actually did the background environment, as well as all the sculpted dinosaurs and the crocodilian and bones which populate the environment. Miss Liz Berry actually did the foliage. Turns out all the plants which populate this environment are real plants which have just been dried and painted. I'm really curious about if that's one of the main reasons why it just feels so alive still. Starting off with the smallest one in this entire set, the little crocodilian Gonophophilus. I have a couple of good pictures of him, currently trying to contest with the Allosaurus, as well as the other little lad. There's actually like 2 in here, but the other one's just leaving, probably because he doesn't want to contest with such a large predatory animal. It is a lovely little sculpt. I do wonder what medium it is. Part of me feels like it's some type of airish dry clay. I'm not entirely too sure on if it would be a type of polymer. It might be, but I feel like it would have cracked at least at some time now. It's been so long. The fact that it can be so small and have such detail is a real big inspiration to me. I really do enjoy how much there is compacted into this little guy. And this is just one of the smaller ones. We haven't even covered my favorite yet. But moving on from them, let's move on to someone else for a second. Someone a bit more post-mortemly. The Stegosaurus here, although deceased and post-mortemly in the sculpture, really does add to the sense of that this environment is just dry. You can feel that just sense of drought encompassing this entire diorama by the bare bones left on this massive animal. Moving on from the Stegosaurus to the Camptosaurus. The Camptosaurus here currently is being contested over by the Allosaurus and the Gonophophilus. Although I will say, something I find remarkably funny is the little pun here left by, I'm assuming, one of the berries. Oh, I can only imagine the humor that they must have been having while they were sculpting this little guy. It must have been spectacular. I just enjoy how much detail is compacted into these sculptures, I really do. The audible fact that there's just raw bone and innards in such a tiny compacted sculpture really does add so much inspiration and just joy to this entire feeling. Moving on from the critter trying to save their lunch to the critter trying to steal some lunch, the Allosaurus in this frame I do adore extraordinarily. I know it's an outdated proportion animal with more lizardy-like legs and not the proper stance, but just seeing it trudging on down in order to get a good bite of this Camptosaurus, oh, it really is just spectacular to see. especially with the picture I have from the berries. Being able to look at this animal up close and just see all the detail that they put into it is spectacular, from the crests all the way down to the minute wrinkles under the eye. Oh, it really is a spectacular specimen that they sculpted here. I wonder exactly which head they used. I know in Brian Engh's video that they mentioned which head he believed they used, but looking at this is making me think of the old Smithsonian dino head. That specimen has a more of a closed-in snout, so to say, where it's more bulldog-ishly reconstructed. And you can see it here, especially in this specimen of the diorama, where the jaw actually has the little notch in the front for where the teeth go. Really curious. I do wish I knew which clay they would use for this. I wonder if they even... I know all of the previous illustrations were watercolor, so I'm curious if you can watercolor a sculpture, if that would make any other difference. I don't know. I'm gonna maybe give it a try one day. We'll see what happens. I'll let you all know. But in the last specimen to cover in this diorama, although sadly not in a lot of pictures, more or less just almost hiding, especially from the situation, defensively gazing upon the Allosaur as it contests for this carcass, is the Camarasaur. You can really feel that sense of tortoise reference here. It is palpable, especially in some pictures of its head. The wrinkles on the neck make me imagine you must have been looking at possibly Galapagos tortoises. Given how they usually would construct these types of animals for these times, usually sauropods are just given these spindly little thin necks around this era, but this Camarasaurus has a thick, bulky neck proportional to its proper stature, even though it does have the sad stance of a more sprawled lizardy-like gait. It is fascinating to see it though. A part of me wonders what would have had happened to our current paleontological understanding if at some point we found out that that just was how an animal was constructed during that era. I'm going to save that idea for a different video, but it is a fascinating thought process to understand though. But the scene laid before us goes as followed. The exhibit shows the environment in which the dinosaurs were preserved at this site over 140 million years ago. As dinosaurs died, a river and its tributaries swept many of the bodies downstream. Some grounded on the sandbar, and later floods covered them with sand. A few of the carcasses were buried almost whole, but most of them were torn or washed apart before their burial. An Antrodemus is vying with a crocodile, who is also devouring the stranded carcass of Camptosaurus. Large, plant-eating Camarasaurus watches the incident unfold from the forest to the right. I really do love this diorama so much. It makes me honestly really wish we had more dioramas in this modern day. Dioramas play a huge part, I feel, in just being able to physically immerse yourself with a scene or a passageway of time. It's a good way to break down something so much larger into something so much more manageable and understandable for people. I know illustrations can help, but sometimes just seeing something in a physical form can really make a difference. William D. Barry was a wildlife artist who I think was personally one of the greatest. It's a continued shame to see how little he is known in the more modern times. He should be up there with the other great paleo artists and even other wildlife artists. Paleoart is an art form that I feel doesn't even get as much credit as it deserves. It's a rigorous task to comprehend both the world we live in, its fundamentals. It's a rigorous task to comprehend both the world we live in, its fundamentals, its anatomy, its ecology, its flows through extinction. And to view that into the past, to take all that we know now and to try to reconstruct the causes and effects that made the world we live in, how it is now, how it is structured, how it is made, how it was built to its very building blocks. That is a monumental task. And so I implore you, as the viewer, to venture onward and explore more of this world, to explore more of his art. His wonderful art of the natural world led to some of the most magical pieces I have ever seen. Artwork I beseech you to dive into yourself. Look into his books, look into his magnificent illustrations of life, and a glimpse into the splendors that make our world, the love and prosperity. Look into his books, look into his magical and magnificent illustrations of life. Take a glimpse into the splendors that make our world the joy that it is to live in. But I ask you just as much to go out and create your own masterpiece. To properly understand the past, we must first understand the comprehension and the fundamentals of our present. But only you can make that a future. Only you can make the future. And so, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and explore the world we call home. Special thanks to Rebecca Hunt Foster for the modern pictures, as well as Mark Berry and Diana Berry for the assistance in acquiring these photos from the Sandbar Cemetery's constructive process. Thank you to everyone who has uploaded photographs of all of the artwork used in this video. Thank you to you again for watching and for reaching the end of this video. This video would not be possible without viewers like you. Thank you.